For years and years, housing has been one of those features that WoW players joked would never happen. Every expansion announcement came and went, and housing remained the same desire in the community's heart. Garrisons were Blizzard's answer, and for many, that just felt like a smack in the face. Class halls were a big improvement, but it still wasn't personal, still not customizable, and still not your own. So when Blizzard recently decided to finally give us the system that was planned to be a feature way back in vanilla, I asked myself the question, which MMO really has the best housing system now? Since my only experience with housing before WoW was Wizard 101's system, which was honestly as simple as a math equation in first grade, I couldn't really give a good answer. That is why I asked the same question over on Reddit to get a better view of other MMOs player housing from people that really invested their time and sunk their heart into their digital home for thousands of hours. I will rate all these different games by 4 simple categories. Creativity, how much stuff can you create by yourself by simply using what's given to you? Immersion, how does the housing system affect your gameplay and does it alter the rest of the community in any shape or form? Economy, how much money could you make with your plot and how much did it cost you to create the house and maintain it? And accessibility, are you forced to log in continuously to keep your plot? Is the system accessible for new players at all? Over 500 people responded and gave their take on which housing is or was truly the best, and these were the results. One of, if not the most mentioned game when it comes to housing was hands down Archeage. Although already shut down in June 27th of 2024, this game is still remembered as having the best housing system by a landslide, at least for the community. Archeage had open world housing, which means anyone could build their house on designated spots spread across the entire map. These plots were not instanced, which means anyone could see your house at any time. These areas were also not just some secluded area no one ever goes to or sees. Some of them were actually questing areas and people would most definitely stumble across your creation at some point. So if you wanted someone to find you or wanted to see your house, you could literally just give them your address. I'm not kidding. The houses in Archeage had different sizes with different costs attached to them. You could buy cottages, farmhouses, tree houses, even villas if you had the financial capabilities to do so. You had a lot of freedom when choosing what type of house you wanted and what functionality it was supposed to cover. You see, Archeage's player housing actually had a use for the player. You could grow several different things like fruits, veggies, flowers, and so on. Raise animals, honeybees, trees for thunderstruck and lumber, and so much more. The housing system pretty much was a mini Animal Crossing inside the MMO itself, which made it incredibly useful. But even if you only wanted to decorate and make your house as beautiful as possible, you had tons of choices. You had a lot of options for decorating, so much so that you were able to upload your own image to customize decorations, which might be the only game that had this feature to this day. Correct me if I'm wrong. But as I mentioned, the houses were not in an instance zone, which means not everyone had the chance to get the plot they wanted. If you played on a server that didn't have land to claim or were simply a new player trying to get your first house, you were pretty much out of luck, and this system was absolutely horrendous. You could technically buy land someone else has claimed for egregious amounts of money, and if you were a new player, you simply didn't have these resources to do so. This mechanic proved that deeply integrated housing could work, but is also easily collapsible on itself. At its best, Archeage made land ownership meaningful in a way few games ever have. Housing wasn't just a cosmetic thing. It was literal economic infrastructure where owning land meant power and influence. Even the world felt alive because players were literally shaping it themselves. But with so much power, there always has to come a cost. As I mentioned, your plot could become inactive at some point if you didn't pay the taxes. Yes, this game had taxes working like they do in real life, and the only way to pay those taxes was to have an active Patreon subscription. The amount you had to pay in weekly taxes also depended on the type of house you had. Farmhouses were typically lower in taxes than, let's say, a mansion. Although you were able to play the game for free, you couldn't pay those taxes if you didn't have a sub, which means you constantly had to pay real life money and farm the gold if you wanted to keep your plot, even if you didn't want to play the game anymore. Although clearly pay to win, players still say that Archeage's housing system never had any realistic competition whatsoever to this day. Similarly to the next game that was mentioned a lot, Star Wars Galaxies. It's hard to overstate how much reverence Star Wars Galaxies still commands whenever housing comes up. In Galaxies, housing was never a side activity. It was the backbone of the social world. Unlike all the other MMOs in Galaxies, you didn't just simply own a simple house. You built entire cities that you could lead as a mayor, zoning, and actual reasons for other players to visit you. Crafters could run shops just outside their homes, and travel routes formed around player hubs naturally. Entire economies formed organically simply by player interaction and forming neighborhoods. The coolest part about Galaxy's housing was that it was also truly open world. You had very little limitations on where to build your house. You could literally build it anywhere on most of the planets the game had to offer. If you wanted to live in Naboo or Tatooine, you could literally do so. If you found a spot on the map away from any major city, you could build it there, which made every single server different. Player housing reshaped the way players navigated the game. If you wanted something, you went to a player's town. If you wanted to sell something, you built a place that people would find and travel to. Because of that, the world felt inhabited, in a way that modern MMOs just simply can't replicate nowadays. When it came to decorating, Star Wars Galaxies also never came short. They 3D modeled every single inventory item in the game, purely so you could place it in your own house, which was so far above any other game at the time and even today. And with every single inventory item, I truly mean every single item, which is insane. This way, people were able to build droid factories, entire massive malls, and so many more cool builds. Similar to Archeage, Galaxy's housing also had functional things like storage, crafting stations, and things that would aid you in the game in general. For some, this game had the best player housing iteration, and no other game even came close to this day. But with all these positive things, there also come a ton of negative stuff. Land scarcity was eventually a problem. Although players were able to build anywhere, you were eventually limited because of that. At some point, massive cities formed in otherwise empty areas and took over a lot of space. The possibility to build anywhere eventually became just an illusion, and people had to pray to find a spot that was still empty yet inhabitable. This caused the same issues as in Archeage, where players had to fight for their spot by paying the maintenance cost for their home. These massive cities with mobs and players running around also caused massive performance issues, especially back in the early 2000s, where PCs had the performance of an average phone of today's day and age. But even with all these caveats, the sentiment remains remarkably consistent, and even I am sad that I never got to experience the massive player-formed cities and interactions, and that I never had the chance to play Galaxies at all. Another MMO that was mentioned a ton was Wildstars, which occupies a strange middle ground in these conversations. Wildstars housing is almost universally praised for its tools. The freedom it gave players to build, break, and experiment is still talked about years after the game unfortunately shut down. Some people in the comments remember creating custom jumping puzzles or elaborate visual jokes, things that had nothing to do with progression and everything to do with creativity. Different to the other housing systems I already mentioned in this video, Wildstars was instanced, so everyone had the exact same plot and there was no fight over land at all. There were also no upkeeping costs, as you simply had no one to lose the plot to. Wildstar's specialty in housing were the massive plots where you could theoretically place 10 houses next to each other and still have enough room to design the place. Now, what would you do with that much space? Well, everything. There were these called fab kits that could add interesting things to your plot, as some were useful for trade skills such as harvesting kits. You had banking, personalized customizations, challenges, housing expeditions, buffs, and simple aesthetics. You also got rested XP whenever you were in your house, and the amount you got was always dependent on the amount of items you had on your plot. The more items you had placed down, the more rested XP you got at the end, giving the player an incentive to use this feature to its maximum. If you just wanted to decorate your house, you had so many things to choose from, as decor was what made the housing feature shine in Wildstars. You couldn't really choose the environment and where you want to build your plot, but you were able to customize the housing instance to your liking. You could change the grass, the walls, the doors, even the skybox was customizable to your liking. Since you don't have to pay some sort of tax to keep up your house, the developers decided to implement different methods of sinking your gold into the system. Every change to your home and housing plot cost you money or renown, which was a different kind of currency earned by grouping up with other players. So if you wanted to change the walls in your house, it would cost you a small amount of money. They also had housing vendors who would sell you exclusive items for a moderate price, with some of them giving you certain benefits like buffs. The coolest part about these vendors was that you were able to test the object before actually buying it. So if you were unsure if that specific decor item fits your build, you could just place it down, take a look for yourself, and then decide whether or not to buy it. Additionally, every decor item was freely movable and customizable with the advanced mode. You could change their size, their angles, combine them with other items. You had complete freedom when it came to decorating things, up to a point where you could place down a floating piece of cheese in your plot if you wanted to. But with the fact that it was instanced and no one was able to see your plot unless invited or specifically adjusted in the settings that way, the player base simply coexisted without ever interacting with each other. Unlike Star Wars Galaxies, where players would organically create cities and economies, Wildstars had nothing like that. It was a playground and private room, similar to garrisons in World of Warcraft, and pretty much separated you from the world. Elder Scrolls Online was praised a lot for its housing system, especially for the ease of access. The key difference this game has that others don't is that you pretty much get a free house right away the moment you boot up the game, and there's a ton of cheap furnishing items to fill up the place. Once you did, you can move on to another, bigger house. There are plenty tiers of houses similar to Archeage, so however much gold you can spend, you can get a nice house in that range. One big plus for ESO is that houses are completely permanent. No one can take them away, you don't have to pay taxes, and once you bought a home, it's yours forever. The catalog of furnishing items is so incredibly massive that some players say it rivals The Sims, which is insane if you think about it. An MMO system has almost as many items to decorate your house with as a fully fledged house building simulator. You can get all these items in many different ways, ranging from fishing all the way to stealing and dungeons. There's practically no limit to where you can find decor items. You have the ability to add house guests and assistants to your home. Assistants are pretty much NPCs walking around your home, making the place feel more alive. House guests are, as you might have guessed, things like pets and mounts, which are collectibles that you can set down in all of your homes to show off and let people know how many cool things you have that they don't. The coolest part is that all of these entities can be set on custom paths, making them walk around the premise to give the place a lively feeling and giving your pets a purpose more than just flexing statues. There's also options to add NPCs like merchants, bankers, and many more to your plot to use. This way, you can have all the necessary NPCs and crafting tables in one area, eliminating the need to run around the entire town to get one thing crafted. There's even fast traveling in the game, which is an incredible feature. But Varian, pretty much every MMO has fast travel to your home, doesn't it? Well, yes, but if you closely listen to what I hinted at in the beginning, you might have realized that I said that you can have multiple houses in this game. All these houses are in different zones and major cities, which means the more houses you have, the more options for free fast traveling you unlock. Other than fast traveling, housing also offers you a ton more benefits. You can have massive storage rooms, which in games like ESO are always needed as the weight of your inventory impacts your gameplay, so being able to stuff all your junk into your home until you actually need it will save you from a lot of headaches. There's almost no restrictions to what you can place down in ESO as well. If you wanted, you could build yourself a whole testing ground with target dummies of any size to test your builds and compare damage numbers. You can connect individual items with each other, moving them all at once. You can angle them in any way you like, up to a point where you can even clip decor items into walls and the ground, opening up new ways to design your home. Oh, and you can build your own waffle house, which I found to be hilarious. This all sounds way too good to be true, right? Well, that's because it kinda is. Although you can get tons of things done without paying money, there will eventually come a point where you will simply be out of options unless you start using crowns, the real money currency of ESO. Some furnishing items reach to a price of up to $3 each, which doesn't sound that bad at first, but regarding the massive list of items available in the game, this number can stack up quite fast. Additionally, there are decor items which are exclusively available from gambling boxes, some of which averaging $60 to $100. Think about that. Many players say that the more time you invest into the system, the more you realize how predatory it can get and how fast you can lose your money by buying all these low price items one after the other. Moving on to Final Fantasy XIV, and oh boy, this is going to be fun. Let's start with the positives, I guess. The player has the ability to have one apartment, one house, and one free company house. You have a large gallery of furnishing that looks awesome and has a lot of uses. You also have the option to add vendors to your home or add flower pots which can grow several different seeds and flowers that you need for crafting and such. In your house plot, you can also use the bed garden patches outdoors to grow your own fruits. Additionally, you also have the same system like in Star Wars Galaxies, where the houses are spread across different zones in the open world, which means communities, aka neighborhoods, organically form around these areas. Well, but that's about it. In over 500 replies, these points were the only positive things mentioned. The biggest negative aspect is that you have to win a house. Yep, you heard me right. You have to win a housing plot someone else lost due to inactivity in the lottery. Tons of players bid on the same plot by depositing the full price of the plot until the winner is decided randomly. And the prices of houses range between 3 million to 50 million gil, which is a fuck ton of money for the average FF14 player. If you win, congrats. If you don't, you now have a set amount of time to get a refund of your gills before it's lost to the void forever. So if you forget it, too bad. This system is so bad in fact that people buy plots just to sell them for real money on third-party websites for insane amounts of money. Alright, anyways, let's say you actually won, which is pretty unlikely anyways, but you did. Now you have to stay subbed through endless content droughts to keep it, because if you don't enter your home at least every 45 days, it's going to be destroyed and given away to someone else via the lottery. Yep, you heard it right. You could stay subbed forever if you want to, but if you don't enter your house at least once in those 45 days, you still lose it nonetheless, which is crazy. But hey, you get an email warning you a few days prior, so that's something, right? Oh, by the way, you then also lose the money you invested in that plot, so have fun farming all that money back if you ever come back. Okay then, you won your house, you keep on playing, and now you start decorating the place. Well, be prepared for a lot of frustration as the placement restrictions in this game are horrendous. So bad in fact that players came up with different types of glitches to bypass them, which gets pretty tedious at some points. The system in FF14 is so bad in fact that when you type FF14 housing into YouTube, all you get is videos like this. People have been complaining about the system for years now, but for whatever reason, Square Enix apparently just doesn't care and doesn't do anything about it, which is a shame as I can really see the potential from all the little bits and pieces I saw from actual building your own house. Now, before you come at me for bashing the game in the comments, this isn't my opinion. I've never played FF14 and I'm not planning to start gambling for a house just to lose it eventually. This is the opinion of the broad player base of FF14. Moving on to the housing system I personally am most comfortable with, World of Warcraft. The youngest and newest housing system of them all, and I must honestly say it's already really good. Blizzard was always known to take the best parts of another MMO's feature, polish them and add them into their own game. Like how they took flying from Guild Wars 2 and added them into WoW with dragon riding, and this time it's no different. Now, housing in WoW isn't really out yet, as it is pretty much in early access until March, when the Midnight expansion releases along with all the planned features for the player housing. But if we compare the things we already have in the game, it is already a lot better than some of the housing systems I mentioned in this video already. Final Fantasy. WoW's housing probably has the best accessibility along ESO, as you can literally jump into the system with level 1 without having to do any prior questing or leveling. If you only want to play WoW for its housing system, you can, and I think a lot of people are drawn to that. It is very easy to get into it as you get a set amount of decor items ready to use, but can get in depth very quickly with the use of the advanced mode, where you can scale and realign items however you want to, very similar to Wildstars. The amount of creative freedom you have in this game is insane, and every single day you can see new homes and creations spread across the internet you thought were impossible to achieve. Over on the r/wow housing Reddit, you can see tons of builds created by mashing together random pieces of furniture and achieving something breathtaking. I mean, look at this custom cat tree. It's so cute, isn't it? The housing system is very similar to Wildstars as mentioned before, and that's because some of the previous employees of NCSoft moved over to Blizzard to work on their housing, and you can definitely tell. You have a big list of decor items you can get by just playing the game, which is always nice to see. There are random drops, raid drops, dungeon drops, profession crafts, achievements, and so many more sources where you can get some type of housing item out of it. Now, unlike any other MMO I've mentioned in this list, WoW's housing system is in between the open world and being instanced. You actually have a whole separate island for player housing, with predetermined plots that you can get for free. These plots can and will be occupied by other players, but unlike games like Archeage, where you have to fight for the plot, you can actually jump over to another phase or create an entirely new phase of that same island if you want to have a plot that someone else already has occupied. There are always gonna be enough players for the island to be filled up eventually, so you will always be able to see other players' homes and build friendships in that neighborhood. You can also create private neighborhoods if you want to for you and your friends, or form an island just with your guildmates, allowing you to live exclusively with people you already know instead of random players that are thrown into your phase of the island. This is honestly a perfect middle ground for the average housing player, as you don't feel as alone as in the games like Wildstars, where everyone has the same plot in their own instance, and you don't have to fight for your plot every single day by paying taxes and walking into your home to keep it to your name. You can, however, still lose your home. If you are inactive for an extended period of time, you will lose your plot on a public neighborhood. What that means is that your house won't be blown up like in Final Fantasy XIV, but rather put into a storage of some sort. This means that you never lose your home permanently, as you can simply get another plot when you come back and have everything you created for all these countless hours at the ready. You can also relocate your house a countless amounts of times if you want to, for a sum of gold obviously. If you are in a guild neighborhood and you decide to leave the guild, you obviously lose access to the guild neighborhood as well, but you will be able to move to another plot if you wish to do so. I really love the fact that Blizzard respects your time and effort you put into your home and assures you in many different ways that you simply won't lose your home just because you didn't feel like playing the game for a bit. But as I said, the feature is still in its early access, and so it has a lot of issues. So many issues in fact that I made an entire video dedicated to that topic. I'll keep it short here, but you can check out the video if you want to get more into detail. There's still a ton of basic features missing in this system. You can't really show off or use your pets and mounts in any shape or form in your plot. You don't really have a ton of personalized customizability like in other games, like armor stands showing off your gear that you collected over the years, or legendary weapons you can hang on the wall to remember the good old times of running Molten Core 150 times just to get Thunder Fury. But my main gripe with this feature is that you don't really have any use of it except decorating. There is no rested XP, no buffs, no crafting furniture, nothing. This entire system is currently purely for decorating purposes and decorating purposes only. Although not confirmed, I really wish for Blizzard to add things that would incentivize the player to use their homes for more than just decorating. And the biggest issue for many players that don't actively play WoW, that might be a huge wall that prevents them to get into the system, the paywall. You not only have to pay a monthly fee of $15 a month to play the game, but you also have to buy the expansion for at least $50 if you want to make use of housing. Now, many other games on this list either have a sub or a one-time purchase of an expansion, but pretty much none of them require you to have both. Except Final Fantasy, I guess. But now that we went through all these MMOs, which of them is truly the best? Well, if you simply want to use your housing to let your creativity roam free, I can recommend World of Warcraft or ESO, as both of them have a ton of freedom when it comes to your builds. You can create things from scratch and all you need for it is an imagination. If you want to build furniture that isn't in the game, you most definitely should be able to mash other items together to get the same results, which I love. An honorable mention is Archeage though. I really love the custom photos feature. If you simply want to experience the world you live in to its fullest and immerse yourself into the RP, I would say Star Wars Galaxies. The freedom of settling down wherever you want, being able to lead entire cities and starting raids to take over other cities, all these things just scream immersive to me, and I would really like to experience these moments myself. Obviously, the game shut down many years ago, but from what I could tell, there's still dedicated private servers achieving the same thing. So if you really want to immerse yourself into the Star Wars world, maybe check out one of those. When we're talking about usefulness in general, I think Archeage is unbeatable. The amount of things you can do in your plot is incredible. Starting from growing fruits and veggies in your garden, to raising animals, all the way to having entire tree farms for lumber and Thunderstruck. Housing was a reliable source of money with the use of farms, crafting, etc. and I don't think any other MMO on this list comes close. The decorative element was rather limited from what I can tell, but the functional aspects were polished insanely well. If you are purely talking about accessibility, it is indeed probably ESO. Although ESO can get very expensive at some point, you will most likely enjoy your time until you reach that wall, which isn't done in a few hours. You pretty much get a house the moment you log in, and the only thing you need is an active subscription to be able to play the game. You can't lose your house if you log out for an extended amount of time, and the things you can do in your plot can get very detailed and beautiful if you put time and effort to it. You're also never limited to one single house, as you can simply buy tons more and decorate them in different ways without having to sacrifice your main house for it. You also have incredibly long lists of furniture ready to go and used to let out your creative freedom. All in all, I think ESO is a very good starting point if you're only interested in player housing and decorating. And last but not least, the overall best game for housing. Now, as I said, I haven't played all of these MMOs on this list, but I've got a good pros and cons list of all of them thanks to the community. We had a lot of positive aspects in some games that beat other games, but at the end it was always one game that stood out. About 70% of all the replies in these threads always mentioned this game, and it was Archeage. Archeage had the most polished housing system of them all, and still has features to this day that no other MMO managed to copy and improve on. The sheer usefulness of your plot was reason enough to invest time into the system, even if you weren't the biggest fan of it. But what is your opinion? What MMO has the best housing system and why? And please keep it civil in the comments. At the end of the day, we are all adults enjoying different types of games for different types of reasons. There's no need to get heated. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like. And while you're down there, consider subscribing to not miss any future uploads of mine. We are very close to the 10k subscriber mark, and I would be really happy if we somehow manage to get it before the end of the year. If you want to learn more about housing in WoW, you can click on either one of these videos. Anyways, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of the day, and I will see you in the next one.